The moment that shattered everything didn't start with a dramatic fight or screaming match. No, it started in silence, me sitting at the kitchen island, surrounded by acceptance letters from the best universities in the country, Columbia, Stanford, Caltech, and the newest one, still trembling in my hands, Yale. I was shaking, but not from nerves, joy, validation, relief. Mom, Dad, I called out, voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. I got into Yale. I got in. Our house, a sprawling tutor in the hills of Portland, had never felt warmer than it did in that moment. 3 generations of the Lancaster family had lived there, each generation leaving their mark. Mine was supposed to be the Ivy League acceptance. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. My mom appeared first, heels clicking sharply on the polished wood floors. Her red lipstick hadn't budged from the morning. Behind her, Dad followed, as polished as ever in his gray suit, loosening his tie like he always did when he was about to deliver news. "That's great, Alina," Mom said, carefully. But there was something off. No smile. Just a look that was unreadable, tight lips, raised brows, eyes flicking to Dad for backup. Dad cleared his throat. "Sweetheart, why don't you take a seat? We need to talk." That sentence, "we need to talk." It should be illegal to say that to your child right after they get into their dream school. I stayed standing, still clutching the Yale letter like a lifeline. What's going on? Dad didn't waste time. "It's about your brother, Marcus." Of course it was. "He's developed this new green tech prototype," Mom added, stepping in like they'd rehearsed this speech. A power cell that could revolutionize energy efficiency in electric vehicles. I blinked. Okay, cool. What does that have to do with Yale? Dad's expression tightened. He needs backing, real capital, to get it off the ground. And we've made the decision to invest. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "We're putting everything into Marcus's project. Everything," Dad said. My stomach dropped. "What about my college fund?" Silence. Like the kind that comes before a storm. Dad's gaze dropped to the floor. "It's gone. All of it." I felt the world tilt. "What do you mean it's gone? That was my money." "You promised." "You're being dramatic, Alina," Mom snapped, the softness in her tone gone. "Marcus's invention could change the world. This is bigger than 1 degree." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That fund had almost $250,000 in it. My babysitting jobs, my scholarships, Grandma's savings. My voice cracked. "You gave it all to him?" "For the family," Dad replied coldly. "And if you truly understood the value of sacrifice, you'd be proud to help." I laughed. A bitter, ugly sound. Proud to be robbed? Marcus, the golden boy, 4 years older, 3 failed startups behind him, and an endless line of excuses they called potential. I was the one with the perfect grades, the volunteer hours, the leadership roles. He was the dreamer. I was the doer. And still, they chose him. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. "Every penny," Dad said. That was it. My knees went weak, but I stayed standing, barely. "Alina Marie Lancaster," Mom said, like she was scolding a 5-year-old. "You'll just have to figure something out. Loans, community college, whatever. Marcus needs this." I was 18, just 18, and somehow I'd been cast aside like a spare part. Something inside me snapped, not with a scream, not with a slam, just a quiet click, the end of believing they'd ever see me. I didn't say another word. I just turned around and went upstairs. They probably thought I was going to sulk, maybe cry into a pillow, but I didn't. I grabbed my backpack and started packing. Clothes, laptop, passport, birth certificate. The emergency card Dad had given me for college emergencies. Funny how this felt like the ultimate one. I even grabbed the $180 I'd been saving to buy a Yale hoodie. I stood in my room staring at the trophies on my shelf. Debate, science fairs, academic decathlons. Every plaque represented a version of me who still believed hard work meant something. I'd spent years trying to be the daughter they could be proud of. Turns out, all I had to do was be Marcus. A car engine purred outside. I peeked through the curtains. Of course, Marcus's Tesla had arrived. Probably here for a celebratory dinner with the funds stolen from my future. The final insult. Downstairs, laughter floated up. Marcus's booming voice, my parents' adoring chuckles. Like nothing had just been ripped out of me. I opened my laptop, typed out 2 emails. One to Yale, Dear Admissions Committee. With regret, I must decline my offer due to unforeseen financial hardship. Thank you for believing in me. Sincerely, Alina Lancaster. The second to my parents, you made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Don't try to find me, Alina. I shut the laptop, yanked the battery out, and shoved it deep into my bag. One last glance around. The medals, the photos, the childhood stuffed animal on my bed. I didn't take any of them. They belonged to someone else now. I climbed out the window like I had 100 times as a kid, sneaking out to stargaze. Except this time, I wasn't coming back. At the bottom of the trellis, I paused. My hands were scraped. My heart was breaking, but I was free. I walked until the mansion disappeared behind the trees. No plan, just a determination that burned hotter than anything I'd ever known. I didn't know then that this moment me with a backpack, $180, and zero backup would one day become part of a story they'd tell in business schools. I just knew I wasn't going to be the forgotten daughter anymore. I was going to become someone they would regret betraying. But first, I needed a job, a roof, and a reason to believe in myself again. That first night out, freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like wet socks in a cheap motel room that smelled like microwave popcorn and mildew. I sat on the edge of the bed, my backpack propped against the dresser like it was guarding me. My laptop, old but dependable, sat open on a wobbly side table. I had $180 sand change left, barely enough for a week's worth of room and vending machine food. I wasn't scared yet, just numb. The motel TV played reruns of some late-night game show. I watched the flashing lights and fake applause without really seeing it. My phone lay on the bed beside me, battery removed, just in case I got tempted to check messages. I already knew what I'd find calls, maybe a guilt-tripped voicemail or two. Nothing that would change the fact that they'd chosen Marcus. Again, I needed a plan, fast. The next morning, I stepped into a diner 2 blocks from the motel. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee hit me like a hug. I didn't know I needed. A woman behind the counter gave me a quick once, over clean shirt, tired eyes, not local. More coffee? She asked the man next to me, then turned to me. You eating or hiding? Hoping for both, I said. She smirked, slid a menu across the counter. Her name tag said Rosa. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, 2 eggs, dry toast, and bottomless coffee. She brought it over herself and sat across from me. You run away from something? I hesitated. Something like that. She didn't press, just nodded. We're hiring, kitchen help. It's gross, hot, and pays like garbage. My hand twitched. I'll take it. That's how it started. From 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. I scrubbed pans, prepped ingredients, and learned how to work a griddle without setting my sleeves on fire. Rosa ran the place like a drill sergeant with a soft center. She didn't ask questions. Just expected you to work hard and keep your head down. That routine saved me. It gave me something solid to hold on to, while everything else felt like shifting sand. After my shifts, I'd head back to the motel, shower off the grease, and open my laptop. I started sketching ideas. Not school essays, not the kind of busy work my old life was full of real ideas. Business plans, tutoring strategies, ways to earn money that didn't involve hash browns and dish soap. Back in high school, I was the girl you went to when your kid had a meltdown over calculus. I could explain thermodynamics to a 12-year-old without making their brain short-circuit. Parents paid a premium for that kind of magic. Now, I saw it differently. I wasn't just a tutor, I was a brand. I registered a website under the name Alina Cole, my mom's maiden name, plain and untraceable. Then I bought a cheap domain and created a bare-bones homepage, Elite Academic Strategy, High-Performance Tutoring by an Ivy-admitted scholar. It sounded fancy. It needed to. My first client came from Rosa's cousin, whose son was tanking his SATs. 1 session turned into 3, then 5. Word spread faster than I expected. Within a month, I was tutoring 3 kids in math, 2 in chemistry, and 1 in AP physics, out of the motel lounge no less. I charged $60 an hour. In Portland's wealthier suburbs, that was a bargain. By month 2, I moved into a small studio apartment above a laundromat. It was loud and smelled like dryer sheets 24/7, but it was mine. I bought a secondhand printer, a proper desk, and flyers that I slipped into fancy cafes and yoga studios with QR codes linking to my site. I didn't sleep much, but I started to feel something I hadn't felt in weeks: momentum. And then came Mia Daniels. Her mom found me through a neighborhood group online. They drove in from Lake Oswego in a gleaming BMW, looking skeptical but desperate. Mia was a junior, struggling with pre-calc and paralyzed by test anxiety. She barely spoke during the first session, but I saw the spark in her eyes when I explained functions like they were puzzles instead of punishments. After 3 weeks, her test scores jumped 20 points. Her mom cried in the driveway. "You're a miracle worker," she said. "Have you ever thought of hiring other tutors? You could build an empire." An empire. I wasn't there yet, but the idea stuck. That night, I sat down and mapped out what it would take to scale. I reached out to 3 of the smartest people I knew from my old honors network. 2 had deferred their Ivy offers. 1 had dropped out for mental health reasons. All 3 were brilliant, broke, and willing to listen. I pitched them this: I'll handle clients, payments, branding. You tutor using my method, and you keep 70% of the earnings. Within days, I had my first team. We called it Momentum Scholars. Our motto: results without pressure, success without burnout. By month 4, I was managing 5 tutors across 3 cities. We worked virtually and in person. I created personalized plans for each student, wrote blog posts about study hacks, and even launched a podcast. Downloads hit 10,000 in the first month. The money was good, not mansion level, but enough to feel like I could breathe. Still, I kept it quiet. I didn't want my name floating back to my family. Not yet. One evening, as I wrapped up a Zoom session with a kid in Chicago, Rosa popped by my apartment. She handed me a Tupperware of enchiladas and a wrinkled envelope. "Mail came for you. No return address." I stared at it for a long time. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I know you're out there. I hope you're okay. Dad, no apology, no explanation. Just that." I folded it once, twice, and slid it into the back of a drawer. That wasn't enough. Not even close. Later that night, I sat on the rooftop with a mug of tea, staring at the city lights. Something had shifted inside me again, like the first crack when a dam starts to give. I was building something real, something that couldn't be taken away with one family dinner and a broken promise. But this was just the beginning. I didn't want revenge. I wanted legacy. And the next step would take me even further from the girl they tried to sideline and closer to becoming someone they could never ignore again. Success didn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It grew quietly, one email, one referral, one late night tutoring session at a time. By the end of that first year, Momentum Scholars wasn't just a scrappy tutoring hustle, it was a machine. We had 10 tutors working under my system. We offered ACT prep, college essay coaching, even mentorship for kids applying to specialized programs. I stopped charging by the hour and moved to premium monthly packages. Parents didn't blink at the $2,000 price tag. They weren't just buying a service, they were buying access, confidence, results. That was my secret weapon. I knew exactly what those kids were going through, because I was one of them. Smart, driven, scared out of my mind that none of it would be enough. But now I had something even better than Ivy League letters. I had influence. And with that influence came doors I'd never even known existed. It started with a phone call from one of our clients, Jared Singh, whose son I'd helped get into MIT. "Listen," Jared said over speakerphone, "I've got a group of tech investors meeting next week in Seattle, mostly early stage stuff. I mentioned you to a friend, said you've got an unusual approach to education and business. They'd love to hear more." I blinked. "Investors? I'm not looking for money." "That's why they're interested," he said, chuckling. "You're not asking for a dime, but they like founders who build things from the ground up. Just go. Tell your story. See what happens." So I went. I wore my best blazer, printed out some data sheets, and practiced my pitch in the hotel mirror until my voice went hoarse. Then I walked into a boardroom full of men and women with expensive shoes and impatient expressions. But 5 minutes in, they were leaning forward, 10 minutes in, they were nodding. At the end, one woman with a sharp jawline and a sharper voice asked, "So what's next?" And for the first time, I said it out loud. I don't want to just help students get into college. I want to change how they get there. I want to create a system where performance doesn't require burnout, where excellence doesn't cost your mental health. I paused. And I want to do it without a single dollar of my family's name. A few jaws actually dropped. When I left that room, I didn't have investors, but I had something better: visibility. They started talking about me, sharing my story, recommending me to school boards, education, think tanks, podcasts. I gave interviews never on camera, always under the name Alina Cole, and every time I dropped a piece of the truth, that I built my life from a betrayal, that I succeeded not in spite of my past, but because of it. By the time I turned 21, we had offices in 4 cities and contracts with 2 private school networks. I bought Rosa a new car and promoted her to my operations manager. She cried when I handed her the keys, then threatened to throw them at my head if I didn't get enough sleep. Fair. But here's the thing about growth. It exposes the weak spots you didn't know were there. One night, I was going over payroll when I saw a familiar name pop up on a client inquiry form. Emma Davenport, daughter of one of Portland's biggest real estate developers, classmate of my brother Marcus in high school. I hadn't heard that name in years, but the second I saw it, everything clicked into place. She'd been the one Marcus used to bring home for dinner, the one my mom used to fawn over like she was already part of the family. Back then, I thought Emma was sweet. Turns out, she had the spine of a python and the charm of a used car salesman. Her message was brief: interested in consulting services for upcoming college applications. My family is also seeking potential partnerships in educational innovation. Let me know if your company offers B2B proposals. I sat there staring at her name, Davenport, rich connected. The kind of client who would have ignored someone like me back when I was just the backup daughter. I should have deleted the message. Instead, I scheduled the meeting. We met at a downtown cafe. She arrived in designer boots and air kissed my cheek like we were old friends. "I'm so glad you reached out," she said, smoothing her coat as she sat. "You've really made a name for yourself." Alina Cole, right? That's new. I smiled politely. Rebrand. Clean start. She nodded like she understood, but I could see the gears turning behind her perfectly mascaraed eyes. The meeting was professional. I explained our packages, our methods, the metrics that proved we weren't just fluff and buzzwords. But at the end, just as she was getting up to leave, she leaned in and said, "You know, Marcus always said you were the smart one." The words hit harder than I expected. I kept my smile in place. Funny. That's not what our parents thought. She blinked. I guess they figured it out now. I let her walk away without another word. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of what Emma said, but because of why she said it. Something was going on. Something involving my brother. Something that had Emma Davenport sniffing around my company like it was her plan B. I started digging. LinkedIn, trade forums, corporate press releases. Marcus had launched another venture, a supposed breakthrough in battery tech for electric grids. Same story, different name. But the difference this time? He was almost out of funding. And then I found the kicker, Montgomery Green Tech, backed by a holding company, run by, of all people, my father. That's when it hit me. They'd gone all in again, betting everything on Marcus, even after all the failures. Even after burning through my college fund, 10 years later, they were still chasing his pipe dreams. And they were losing, badly. Their latest pitch deck leaked online. Half the figures were overblown. The prototype looked half-baked. Investors were pulling out. The company was bleeding cash. It would collapse within the year unless someone came in to save it, unless they could find someone like me. I stared at my screen for a long time, then opened a new file. Project Reset, Strategic Acquisition Plan for Montgomery Green Tech. I wasn't going to destroy them, not yet. First, I was going to let them come to me. And when they did, they wouldn't recognize the girl they'd written off. They'd see the woman who built a new empire on the ruins of their favoritism. And they'd learn one meeting at a time that I never needed their money to become more powerful than they ever dreamed. It started with a call I didn't expect but had been preparing for. My assistant Rosa buzzed in. "There's a man on the line. Says his name is Robert Lancaster. wants to speak to the owner of Momentum Scholars. The name landed like a cold stone in my stomach. My father. After all these years, after silence and distance, after I'd erased every trace of the Lancaster name from my public life, he was calling my company. "Put him through," I said. I leaned back, forced my voice steady. "Hello?" There was a long pause. Then, his voice calmer than I remembered, but tight with something he couldn't quite hide. "Miss Cole," he said carefully, like the name tasted unfamiliar. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. My firm is conducting research into educational partnerships, and your company came highly recommended." He didn't know. He truly didn't know. I almost laughed. "Well, we're always open to collaboration. What kind of partnership are you looking for?" He cleared his throat. "A joint project, perhaps. My company is developing renewable energy technology battery storage. Specifically, there's potential to integrate educational initiatives, STEM outreach, scholarships, public visibility." It was the same pitch I'd seen in his failing proposal decks. A Hail Mary pass disguised as philanthropy. I played dumb. "Sounds interesting. Why don't you send over the details?" "We'd love to set up a meeting," he added, his tone gaining confidence. "Our board is based in Seattle now. Would next Thursday work?" My heart was hammering in my chest, but my voice, cool as steel. "Next Thursday's perfect." When the call ended, I sat frozen in my chair. He didn't recognize my voice. Not even a flicker of hesitation. 10 years, and I'd become so different. He didn't even flinch at the sound of me. That wasn't heartbreak. That was confirmation. I didn't just disappear from their lives. I erased myself so thoroughly, they forgot what I sounded like. And now they wanted help from me. Perfect. The following week, I flew into Seattle early and booked a conference room at one of the glassy towers downtown neutral turf. No company logos. My team knew this wasn't a standard pitch. I asked Rosa to stay nearby, but out of the room. "I need to do this alone," I told her. She didn't argue. She just handed me my tea and said, "Be gracious and be lethal." I smiled. When they walked in, my father, my mother, and Marcus, trailing behind it, was like watching ghosts step into a living room. They looked tired, a little older. Marcus had filled out, lost the manic sparkle in his eyes, replaced by a nervous energy. I recognized all too well. My father extended a hand. "Miss Cole, thank you for meeting with us." I shook it firmly. "Happy to." He gestured toward the chairs. "This is my wife, Evelyn, and our head of R&D, Marcus." My mother gave a polite smile, her gaze briefly scanning the room, probably assessing my suit, my shoes, the absence of assistants. She had no idea. I opened my laptop. "Let's get started." For the next 40 minutes, they pitched me a watered-down dream. Charts, prototypes, grant proposals. My father used every buzzword in the book. Scalable infrastructure, green disruption, strategic positioning. I watched, nodding occasionally. Marcus barely made eye contact. He spoke quickly, tripping over numbers, hedging with phrases like projected trajectory and future roadmap. When they finished, I closed my laptop and folded my hands. "Well," I said, "it's ambitious, but it looks stretched. You're hemorrhaging investors, your patents are pending approval, and your burn rate's unsustainable. You're out of time." My father stiffened. "Excuse me?" I stood slowly, walked toward the windows overlooking downtown Seattle. It's poetic, really, that you'd walk into a meeting asking for salvation from a stranger, when I'm not a stranger at all. Their confusion was palpable. I turned. "Do you remember telling your daughter she could take out loans like everyone else?" My mother blinked. "What?" "Do you remember using her college fund to gamble on your son's fourth visionary failure?" My father's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" I stepped forward, calm, precise. "You wanted to talk to Miss Cole, but you already know me." Marcus stood. No, that's not." "Hi, Marcus," the first said, letting the venom slide into my voice. "I see the Tesla didn't come with accountability." My mother looked like she'd been slapped. "Alina? I go by my middle name now," I said flatly. Thought it was better that way. Clean slate, no history, no family. Silence. Utter, crushing silence. I let them sit with it for a full 10 seconds before continuing. "I built this company from scratch. I lived in a motel for 6 months. I scraped together the pieces of a future you threw away like spare change. and now you want a piece of it. I opened my laptop again, clicked through a folder marked Green Tech Rescue. Here's the deal. I buy you out. All of it. Your patents, your liabilities, your debt. My father bristled. You think we'd hand over our legacy to a what? I asked, voice low. A daughter you betrayed? A woman you didn't even recognize when she picked up the phone? He said nothing. I leaned forward. You're not in a position to bargain. Your brand is toxic. Your product is broken. And your reputation is dying faster than your credit score. My mother finally spoke. Why would you do this? I smiled. Because unlike you, I don't leave people behind when they fail. I fix what's broken. I build things. I don't destroy them. I clicked again. These are the terms. Marcus steps down permanently. You and Dad hand over full control. I absorb your debts, and in return, you walk away with just enough dignity not to be remembered as the family who blew 100 years of legacy chasing pipe dreams. Marcus was furious. You're not better than me. No, I said quietly. I'm not better. I'm just finished pretending I'm less. They stared at the document in front of them. I let them squirm. Then I stood, gathered my bag. You don't need to sign it now. But know this, every day you wait, your company loses value. Every hour, another investor pulls out. You have until Friday. I walked to the door, paused. Oh, and Mom? I glanced back. Next time you tell a daughter to be practical, remember she might take that advice and turn it into an empire. And then I left. The hallway outside felt like oxygen after suffocation. Rosa was waiting at the elevator. So? I handed her the folder. They're going to sign. She tilted her head. And if they don't? I smiled. Then they'll go down. And this time, I won't stop it. That night, I went back to my hotel and opened the drawer by the bed. Inside was that letter from Dad, crumpled, faded, still unsigned. I stared at it for a moment, then tore it in half. Not out of spite, out of peace. Because now, I wasn't angry. I was free. And the next chapter wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving I could build something even they couldn't touch. Friday came faster than expected. By noon, the signed agreement sat on my desk. Marcus was out. My parents had transferred full control of Montgomery Green Tech's assets, liabilities, and intellectual property to Momentum Innovations, a newly formed division of my company. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt, still, like standing on the other side of a storm. No thunder, no lightning, just a sky that didn't quite know what to do with itself. I stared at the documents for a long time. It was all so official, so clean, no shouting, no courtroom drama, just signatures on paper and the quiet transfer of power from the people who raised me to the daughter they had forgotten. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This was about control, about proving mostly to myself that I could build something from nothing and stand tall in a room where they once told me to sit down and stay quiet. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. Taking control of a crumbling company is one thing. Saving it? That was a whole different beast. The first meeting with the remaining staff at Montgomery Green Tech was tense. They didn't know who I was. Not really. I walked in wearing black slacks and a soft gray blazer, no title pinned to my chest. Just Rosa by my side and a slim portfolio under my arm. Most of them were expecting a private equity shark or a smug tech CEO looking to gut their jobs. Instead, they got me. I walked to the front of the room, plugged in my laptop, and faced a sea of guarded eyes. Let's get one thing straight, I said. This company's not dying, not under my watch. No reaction. Just the hum of the HVAC and the flicker of fluorescent lights. I continued. I'm not here to slash your jobs. I'm not here to flip this place for parts. I'm here to fix what's broken. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I clicked to the next slide, a new logo, Momentum Green, stamped over a clean green-blue gradient. A rebirth. We're rebranding. Effective immediately. This company will become the sustainability engine it was always meant to be. A hand went up in the second row. A man in his 40s, shirt wrinkled, eyes skeptical. Why should we believe you? I nodded. Fair question. Because I've been where you are, ignored, undervalued, set up to fail. I met his gaze. But I don't run companies the way they used to. I don't gamble with people's livelihoods. I build with people, not on top of them. Silence. Then, slowly, he nodded. That was all I needed. The next few weeks were a blur of restructuring. I brought in engineers from my own network, paired them with Montgomery's remaining talent, and hired consultants to streamline the tech. We ran audits, killed bad contracts, rewrote the prototype architecture from scratch. We stopped pretending Marcus's design was revolutionary, and started actually making it one. Rosa managed the operations team like a general on a mission. She didn't care about job titles or politics. She cared about getting results and making sure nobody got left behind. "We're not a startup anymore," she told one of the execs. "We're a rescue mission. Start acting like it." I watched from the center of it all, guiding, tweaking, rethinking every choice. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need to. Not yet. Momentum Green wasn't just a company. It was my rewrite. A month later, I got a message. It came through the company's general contact form, anonymous, short, almost hesitant. "Congratulations." I saw the press release. "Looks like you did what we couldn't." There was no name, but I knew who it was. Marcus. I stared at it for a while, then forwarded it to Rosa without a word. She didn't ask. We both knew I wasn't ready to answer. Instead, I focused on what was next. Momentum Green launched its first official pilot with a mid-sized city utility company. The results were better than projected: more efficient battery storage, longer lifespan, easier integration. One success turned into 3. Investors who'd ghosted my father were now emailing me daily. Some recognized the new brand. Some still didn't realize I was his daughter. That was fine. I liked being underestimated. It gave me space to move. About 3 months after the takeover, I received a formal invitation. The Montgomery Foundation Gala, hosted annually by my parents, big black tie event. A fundraiser for educational initiatives, green tech, and ironically supporting first-generation entrepreneurs. I almost laughed. Rosa found the invite in our mailroom and dropped it on my desk. "You going?" I looked at the heavy cream envelope, embossed with gold foil. "Not sure yet." She raised an eyebrow. "Could be a statement. Or a trap." She shrugged. "Sometimes a trap is just an opportunity in disguise." That night, I pulled the old letter from my drawer, the one my dad had sent before I confronted them. I hadn't thrown it away. Not really. Just folded it behind newer papers. I read it again. Short, vague. A hint of guilt, maybe. But never the words I needed. Never, "I'm sorry." Still, part of me wondered, if they were inviting me now, was it pride? Was it pity? Or was it something else? In the end, I said yes. Not for them. For me. I wore a fitted navy gown, sleek and simple, with no jewelry except a single ring Rosa had given me when we closed our first deal. She called it my armor. I walked into that ballroom knowing exactly who I was and who I wasn't anymore. The place was dripping with money, crystal chandeliers, orchestras, servers in white gloves. The kind of event where your worth was measured by the sponsor logos on your name tag. I spotted my parents near the stage. My mother was wearing her signature pearls. My father looked thinner than I remembered. When they saw me, the room seemed to pause. My mother's lips parted slightly. Not quite a smile, not quite regret. My father gave a small nod, hesitant, as if testing whether I'd nod back. I didn't. I walked past them and found my seat at table 3 marked Momentum Green. We were sponsors now, not donors, partners. When the speaker announced my name and asked me to join him on stage to accept an award for innovation in sustainable tech, the applause was polite. When I started speaking, it got quieter. "I built my company out of a motel," I said, my voice steady. "Not out of privilege, not with seed money, but with resilience, with clarity, with the decision to bet on myself when no one else would." I didn't look at my parents. I didn't need to. I believe in second chances, I continued. But more importantly, I believe in rewriting stories, especially the ones that start with being underestimated. Silence, then applause. Real, loud. A few people even stood. Later that night, as the event wound down, my father approached me, alone, no cameras, no audience. "I know I failed you," he said quietly, "and I know it's too late to ask for forgiveness." I looked at him for a long time, really looked. And I said the truest thing I could. "I don't need you to ask," he blinked. "Then why come tonight?" I stepped closer, to remind myself who I am. And then I walked away. I didn't win that night, I didn't get closure, but I got something better. Perspective. Because the truth is, I didn't need to win against them. I just needed to stop playing by their rules. And now, I was writing my own. 2 weeks after the gala, the press ran a headline that felt like something from a movie. Montgomery Green Tech reborn under Momentum Innovations, founder Alina Cole, leading the charge. They didn't mention the family history. No one knew the full truth, except a few trusted people. And that was fine, because this wasn't about being known anymore. It was about building something that would last long after my name, real or adopted, faded from the spotlight. Momentum Green was thriving. We expanded to 5 more states, piloting our energy storage units with utility companies in underserved areas. Cities that were always last on the list when it came to upgrades now had first access to the technology we'd rebuilt from the ground up. I made sure our contracts included job training programs, scholarships for local students, and mentorship for young women in STEM. It wasn't just business, it was personal. Everything I'd ever wanted as a girl: opportunity, belief, space to dream, I was now putting back into the world, one zip code at a time. Funny how that works. You don't always get justice by tearing things down. Sometimes, the deepest form of justice is to build higher than anyone ever thought you could. One rainy afternoon, I returned to Portland. Not for business, not for press, just to see. I parked outside the old Lancaster house. Same iron gates, same trimmed hedges. The place looked smaller than I remembered, though maybe that was just perspective. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't need to. From the street, I could see the upstairs window, my old room. I remembered staring out of it the night I left. Backpack full, heart empty, belief hanging by a thread. It had taken me 10 years to circle back. And yet, sitting there in silence, I realized something important. I wasn't here for closure. I was here to witness, to see the place where it all started, not with longing, not with bitterness, just with truth. I stayed for 5 minutes, maybe 10. Then I turned the engine back on and drove away. Back at headquarters, Rosa met me at the front with 2 coffees and a smirk. "You went to the old house, didn't you?" I shrugged, accepting the drink. "Yeah." "Regret it?" "No," I said. "I think it's the first time I've looked at it without wanting something from it." She nodded, handing me a folder. "Speaking of moving forward, look at this." Inside was a proposal from a non-profit looking to partner with us for an educational program focused on girls from disadvantaged backgrounds, STEM boot camps, internships, financial aid. It was everything I'd wished someone had built when I was 17. I ran my finger along the page, pausing on the line that said, "We'd be honored if Momentum Green could lead this initiative. Your story has inspired hundreds of students already. Let's do it," I said, not for the headline, for the kids who needed to know they didn't have to wait for permission to dream. That weekend, I cleaned out an old storage box I'd forgotten about. Inside were pieces of a girl I didn't recognize anymore, a faded Yale acceptance letter, science fair ribbons, debate team certificates, my first flyer for tutoring, the email confirmation for the LLC. I'd registered under the name Momentum Scholars. And tucked between it all, the name tag from the diner, Alina, server. Rosa had laminated it years ago as a joke. I sat on the floor, holding it, and let the memories rise but not control me. The sleepless nights, the bitter coffee, the way the world felt like it was collapsing inward when my parents chose Marcus over me. And then the climb. One tutoring session at a time, one decision at a time, one boundary after another until the life I wanted didn't feel like a fantasy anymore. It felt like home. A few months later, I received an unexpected call. Rosa buzzed me. "It's your mom." I stared at the blinking light on the office phone. My hand hovered over the button, then dropped. "Take a message," I said quietly. 10 minutes later, Rosa walked in. She said she just wanted to say thank you for saving the company, for giving your dad a peaceful retirement. That was it. No plea, no dramatics, just a thank you. I nodded, noted. But deep down, I understood. They would never fully say what needed to be said, and I didn't need them to anymore. Because peace doesn't come from the people who broke you suddenly changing. It comes from not needing their change to be whole. The official relaunch of Montgomery Green Tech, now Momentum Green, was held in the same building where my parents once pitched to investors. The irony didn't escape me. I stood on stage in a tailored black suit, addressing a room full of reporters, engineers, and entrepreneurs. "My name is Alina Cole," I said clearly. "I'm the founder of Momentum Innovations. 10 years ago, I was told to set my dreams aside for the sake of someone else's vision. Today, I'm standing here because I didn't." Applause. Cameras flashing. But I wasn't doing it for that. I was doing it for every girl, every quiet overachiever, every practical child who got told they'd have to wait their turn. No more waiting. Not in my company. Not in my world. As I walked off stage, Rosa caught my arm. "You know what this feels like?" "What?" "The moment in movies where the protagonist finally becomes the legend." I smiled. "I'm not a legend." She raised an eyebrow. "Then why is there a documentary crew asking for an interview?" I laughed, genuine and full, the sound echoing through the glass atrium. "Tell them I'll think about it." Later that evening, I stood alone in my office, staring out at the city lights. A decade ago, I would have given anything to be here. But now, I wouldn't trade the journey for any shortcut. Because the truth is, I didn't just build a company. I built myself. Every detour, every loss. Every night I thought I wouldn't make it. They weren't setbacks. They were blueprints. For this. For me. And so I leave you with this. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's outgrowing it. Silently. Powerfully. With your name on the building. And your past behind you like a chapter you no longer need to reread. Because the story you're writing now, that's the one that matters. Story 2, my girlfriend is new. She and I are going to live here. You will thus go to your parents when I file for divorce. What you're saying is unclear to me. I am no longer in need of you. If you choose to work as a cleaner or earn a living, I may leave you with my parents. Noah, you get it? My spouse and my in-laws make fun of me. These individuals are the worst. However, I prefer it that way. Then you must all depart. I'm a 32-year-old office worker named Noah. Since my college graduation, I have worked my entire life. For around 10 years, I began working for a large corporation. I put a lot of effort into being qualified for promotions. I am now a department manager at such a young age because of that. In a team of exceptionally brilliant and driven employees, I am fortunate to have a supervisor who is constantly able to share something of value with me. Although I had a highly rewarding career, I had a very unfulfilling personal life. When I was a student, I had a boyfriend, but I haven't had one since I started working. Concerned about my circumstances, I was invited to a dinner party by a friend. Matthew and I met there. Since we were the same age, we had a lot in common, so it was enjoyable to chat to him. He was also friendly, had a lovely grin, and seemed extremely likable. We quickly became friends, shared contact details, and began dining alone together. After that, he was clean about his emotions for me, and we began dating. He proposed to me after we became good friends, and we eventually got married. Being married to the man I adored made me very happy. And shortly after, I visited his parents' home to say hello. I was greeted warmly and graciously by his parents. "Noah, I'm glad to have met you. It's unbelievable that someone so stunning ended up becoming Matthew's wife. The fact that my son brought a decent woman here makes me very proud. Hello, parents. Quit!" Noah is growing frightened. My goodness, you can express it if you truly believe it. Yes, exactly. It's okay, since it's a praise. His parents were amiable and approachable, similar to him. "No, she works for a big corporation, right?" "Oh, no." "That's fantastic. Being a lady who can work hard is cool. When you get married, will you leave your job?" "No. I will continue to work." "Well, you work for a reputable firm and have a nice job. It's better that way." I felt a sense of relief. My pals informed me that their mother-in-law had ordered them to resign from their position. They claim that they are frequently informed that a wife's role is to provide for her husband. I was therefore happy. I reflected that my future mother-in-law was giving. We were married after saying hello to my folks. Excitement for the new wedded life flooded my heart. That was going to start. My spouse and I began our new married life together when he moved into the house I was residing in. Being wedded to my spouse, whom I adore, makes me extremely happy. Being able to spend all of my time at home with him makes me happy, as does having him around when I get home from work. After 6 months of dating, my spouse indicated he needed to talk to me about something. I would prefer you live with my mother and father if that is okay with you. You mean to say that they live together? Indeed, they're growing older. And a lot of things worry me. I understand. I can definitely relate to my husband's feelings. My husband's parents are almost the same age as mine. However, I don't need to worry because my brother and his wife are presently residing with them. But it seems sense that my spouse worries about his parents because he is the only kid. Does this imply that my in-laws are our new home? Indeed, it would. However, do they have a room for us? For whatever reason, they use every space for that, if you will. I believe it would be wise to remodel my parents' home and turn it into a 2-family home. 2 households, indeed. It will be far less expensive to accomplish that than to purchase a new home. Our privacy may be preserved while living in a lovely, roomy home. Correct? I understand. It was, in my opinion, a compelling idea. We won't be together all the time if we live in 2 places, but my in-laws are really kind folks. There would be less tension. That's okay. Yes, really. Thank you. My parents will be overjoyed. Seeing my hubby so content made me joyful. My in-laws later paid us a visit, and they were both quite appreciative. I even reasoned that I wouldn't mind not having 2 houses, because my family is so nice and happy. My husband and I talked about renovating my in-laws' home shortly after that. It would cost about $100,000, but my spouse said something unexpected when we were talking about it. I actually need your help with something. Are you able to cover the remodeling costs? Are you referring to the entire sum? So why? My spouse appeared somewhat uneasy. We're actually in debt. I was taken aback. Neither my spouse nor my in-laws had ever made such a statement throughout our courtship or marriage. I was taken aback. What is the amount of their debt? Around $150,000. What? I was shocked by the amount of money and ended myself yelling aloud because I had assumed it would be a few tens of thousands of dollars. At first it wasn't so awful, but it became worse with time. Furthermore, I couldn't repay it even if I tried. My folks already receive a pension. The debt is growing, and I am unable to repay them as much as I would want. Evidently, I was unable to conceal my astonishment and distress at the abrupt and startling disclosure. My parents-in-law owing me a substantial amount of money, which I was unaware of. I need a favor, Noah. Will you assist me with the debt repayment for my father and father-in-law? They are no longer able to afford it. Additionally, I don't get a very decent pay. Then, renovating the house and living as 2 families together would be difficult, won't it? No, that's crucial. So let's proceed as scheduled. You've asked me to cover your father's debt and the remodeling. I owe $250,000. I want to take care of my life with Noah, even though I realize I'm talking about tough topics. I also want to keep my parents safe. It's because I adore Noah and my parents. I apologize. I'm being avaricious, but kindly help me if you truly love me. I'll gradually reimburse you. I was in a terrible mood. I am the only one my spouse and my in-laws can rely on. I was also aware of my husband's deep affection for me. However, I was totally duped by my husband's statements at the time. I believe that love is blind, and it is just that. All right, I'll cover the cost. I consented to do so. My spouse then shook my hand and said, "Thank you so much," and a big thank you. After he notified my in-laws, they visited our home and expressed their regret to me. My mother-in-law even broke down in tears of happiness. From now on, I have to give it my all. I was resolute in my resolve to assume my in-laws' debt. I did have some funds, but I was scared to pay it all at once. I thus made the decision to use around $330,000 off my money for the time being, and subsequently pay the remaining balance in installments. After my in-laws arrived, we discussed repayment. I informed my in-laws of the recent installments I had made. I could do anything I wanted, they claimed. So why don't you deposit the funds straight into the debt payback account? We struggle with money management, and I'm a little hesitant to send large sums of money. My hubby stated this. My in-laws gave a nod, In fact, transferring the funds to my parents-in-law's account and then waiting for them to move it to their payback account would take a lot of time. Additionally, I would not appreciate it if the money was not sent in the midst of the procedure because it was a substantial amount. I therefore consented to that. After the discussion was over, my parents-in-law appeared to be rather relieved. The monthly debt collection is no longer a threat to us. That has been somewhat frightening. You two ought to give Noah a genuine thank you. I can't even count the number of times. I've thanked you. I am really grateful to you. Many thanks. I'm quite happy that Noah became his wife. No. My in-laws' happiness pleased me. I was a little uneasy, though, since I feared that they may perceive me as a money spinner. When those final words were said, I was a bit guilty. However, I wanted to look after the family of my dear spouse. I started making payments with that in mind, and we finished remodeling our two-family home at the same time. We began residing in a lovely, roomy home together. My husband's eyes glowed at the new house, and my parents-in-law were overjoyed. Cooking in the new kitchen system was enjoyable for me as well, and I was happy that the remodeling was complete. If commute time is reduced, it is more convenient and closer to work here. I have more free time as a result. I can study effectively during that leisure time as well. I was putting a lot of effort into paying off my debt during the day. I was a little worried by something, though. In other words, my spouse did not contribute to my debt repayment in any way. He promised to assist me in paying off my parents' previous debt when I told him about it, but he hasn't even indicated that he will cover the cost out of his own salary. He told me that his wage was completely insufficient to cover the payment when I brought this up to him previously. My spouse obstinately refused to show me his pay stubs when I asked him what his take-home money was. He must pay back his loans, but I'm not sure how much money he makes. For around a year, I put forth a lot of effort to pay off the loan. My in-laws then inquired about the amount of money I still owed. You haven't lost that much if a year has passed. Yes. You would be repaying between $10,000 and $155,000 at most. We repaid around $30,000 this year, to give you an idea. Thus, the remaining sum is around $90,000. I told my parents-in-law this, and they were shocked. What? Did you repay that much? No. That's incredible. If you continue at that rate, you will have paid off the debt in around 3 years. I can pay it off if I put forth a lot of effort. Many thanks. My in-laws were both thrilled and sobbing. I believed that all the effort had been worthwhile if my husband's parents were content in this way. But a few days later, I ran upon something unexpected. I informed my spouse that I would be arriving home late since I had to work extra that day. But the job went unexpectedly well, and we were able to depart on time since several of us had spare hands. I thought I would make supper for my spouse, so I hurried home as usual. However, my parents-in-law were there when I opened the front door. Yes, my mother-in-law is present, along with her family. I believe they had a purpose. I then made my way to the living room. Then I overheard my spouse and my in-laws discussing something. Matthew, you were correct to wed that woman, weren't you? You performed admirably. It's unbelievable that you married a woman with so much money. She is employed by a large corporation. Being extremely cautious, I wooed her. You ought to be more appreciative. My goodness. One of the persons who made that debt was you. What? However, I have the least. What are you discussing? What was your horse racing budget? You're a bad gambler. Every now and again, I win a jackpot. Therefore, we were in the black at times. If you owe $150,000, how can you be in the black? However, if we continue at this pace, we will be able to pay off our debt and get back on track. That's fantastic. She also renovated our home. I have a wonderful wife. Well, once she settles the loan, I'm going to discard her. My parents-in-law and spouse chuckled. For a moment, I was unable to leave the front door because I was so astonished. After a little relaxation, I yelled, "I'm home," from the front door, making a loud noise as I shut the latch. My spouse and parents-in-law smiled at me as I entered the living room. "Oh, Noah. Greetings from home. Well done. We're heading back to our room then. Let's meet together for supper once more." Having overheard my parents-in-law's previous chat, I was terrified by their kind grin. Similarly, I was taken aback by this man who was grinning while feigning to be a kind spouse. I pondered how I had been attempting to reimburse them. You mentioned having to work late today, didn't you? Yes, I've been working much more than I had anticipated, so I made the hasty decision to prepare dinner and arrive home on schedule. I was unaware of that. To keep my husband from noticing what I had done, I did my best to remain composed until dinner. I then stayed in my room and sobbed as loudly as I could while my husband was taking a bath. Made me want to take a vacation from my husband and in-laws. I let out all of my tears. I moved swiftly after that. I started getting ready for the divorce and then gradually planned my post-divorce activities. 3 months or so went by. I told my husband that I had settled my in-laws' debt while acting content. My husband gave me an eye roll. What? You settled the debt. $150,000, that is. I thought that would take about 3 years. Although I do have a sizable amount of money saved up, I was hesitant to pay it all off at once. I therefore began deducting a small amount from my income and savings. But since we had already fallen below $100, I decided it would be best to pay it all off at once. I understand. Then I inquired, would it be okay if I checked and requested to view my bank book? I took my husband to see the bank. Take a look. Oh, it's accurate. The entire $90,000 was paid at once. My husband tried to contain his excitement as much as possible, but I could see that he was itching to get out of there. Wow, Noah. Thank you. My dads are going to love this. My husband put his hands on his face and seemed to be crying, but I knew it was just an act and he was pretending to cry. Soon after that, my parents-in-law also came and thanked me. Many thanks. I'm so glad I met Noah. You're like God. If I had not known any of this, I wouldn't have surely been happy to be along for the ride, having been deceived. But I already know what these people are really like, and I only acted because I was ready for my plan. A few days later, my husband asked to speak with me. My husband looked very serious. What on earth? I'm sorry, Noah, but you have to leave me. What? What do you mean? I acted surprised on purpose. My girlfriend is new. What? She and I are going to live here. So I'm divorcing you, and you're going to my parents' place. I was really taken aback by Matthew's unexpected statement. I knew from eavesdropping on our earlier conversation that my husband would leave me when he finished paying his debts. However, I did not expect him to openly declare his infidelity. After you left me, what did he mean when he asked me to visit his in-laws? I'm not entirely sure what you meant when I said this. My spouse became irritable and said, "You're not very understanding at all. I am no longer in need of you. I can keep you here, though, as a housekeeper or a breadwinner." Oh, no. Then, the front door opened and my in-laws came in. Have you told her at last, Matthew? Yeah, I told her. I wish I had been present at that time. No, that's how it is. You can come to her house if you do the chores for us. Of course, we'll charge you rent, though. My parents-in-law and my husband laughed at me. They are the worst people ever. But that's more than I can say for me. Then all of you need to leave. My in-laws roll their eyes at my comment. What are you discussing? Have you forgotten? I can easily pay for the renovation myself. You changed the name of the house to mine. That's why I have the rights to this house. I can decide who to let live in the house and who to kick out. The faces of my in-laws turned blue at my comment. Then they finally remembered about the title of the house. I was really dumbfounded. I'm sorry, but you can't live here anymore. If we get divorced, you'll be strangers. Oh no. My in-laws realized the gravity of the situation, but my husband, not wanting to be outdone by me, retorted, "But you took over our debt and paid it in full. You're the one who's losing money. If we had no debt, we could at least afford a new place to live." That's true. Thank you for letting us live in a nice house while you pay our debts. My in-laws and husband said as much, so I told them the fact. I'm sorry, but I didn't pay off the rest of the $90,000 debt. What? No. But you had money missing from your bank book. That was just a separate account that I created and moved around. So the debt hasn't changed for $90,000. I just haven't had the collections come yet because I've been paying large sums of money continuously. But I think it's time for them to come. So you are responsible for paying the rest? My husband and in-laws went pale. Then I shot them a warning. Matthew, you told me you were having an affair, so you should pay the alimony. I'll charge your partner for the affair too. Oh no. She went out with me, even though she's beautiful, because I own a house and have money. If they charge me alimony, she'll dump me. I don't care anything about that. No, sorry. Please don't leave us. My husband is afraid of being dumped by the adulterer, and my in-laws are afraid of being dumped by me. They are truly selfish and scum, parents and children in every way. I'll have nothing to do with you people. No matter what you say. I've also put this property on the market. I will also make you pay your debt of $60,000 that I paid on your behalf through my lawyer. Oh no. The in-laws froze, stunned by the loss of everything they had. I immediately requested a divorce and alimony from my spouse through my lawyer. I also claimed alimony from the cheater. I wanted $6,000 from my in-laws for what I had paid them. Actually, that remodeled in-law residence sold for roughly $200,000. It was in a fantastic area, and there was a family that was merely seeking for a duplex. So we received a terrific price. They were able to acquire it, so I had to pay $160,000, which comprised the $60 I owed on the mortgage and $100,000 for the restoration. I had paid $160,000, but earned $40,000 as a consequence. In addition, I also get alimony from my ex-husband and the affair partner, which is a really great position. On top of that, I was able to secure a minor sum of $60,000 from my ex-parents-in-law. I am the one that is getting the most out of this circumstance. I think this is a legitimate request because the harm I had endured was so serious that I distrusted everyone. Regarding my first funds, I was attempting to learn how to invest in order to pay off my in-laws' debts as soon as feasible. Additionally, I invested a few tens of thousands of dollars because I had a sizable amount of cash to start with. In around a year, I discovered that my assets had increased significantly. I was also getting paid rather well because I had received a rise. I had saved a lot of money, so I was able to make such a bold move. The largest beneficiary was me, and my ex-in-laws lost their home and were in debt again. Since they treated me like a scammer, I honestly believe they deserved it. That kind of person belongs in hell. I should take a moment to think about what happened to me this time and work on improving my interpersonal skills. I'll also keep saving money and building up my assets going forward so that I may enjoy a comfortable elderly age. I also want to create a lot of joyful memories, those I can actually rely on. How did you feel about this tale? Additionally, kindly subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the upcoming video. Story 3. My name is Maria Dalton. I've been happily married for 5 years and will be turning 27 this year. Martin, my kid, just turned 4 years old. After getting married, I worked full-time for a while, but now I work part-time at the same firm. Kevin, my spouse, is 30 years old and 3 years older than me. Kevin's passionate approaches started our path from dating to marriage. However, when we were married, I saw that his behavior changed to become more controlling. Jane Dalton, Kevin's sister, is 20 years old, and their age difference appears to be a factor in Kevin's rather indulgent relationship. I imagined they got along well and didn't mind Jane's frequent visits before we were married. But after we were married, I began to see behavioral changes in her. Jane frequently stops by unexpectedly at any time and anticipates being served without ever carrying a thank you note. Instead of confronting the issue, Kevin expects me to comply with her requests. Jane pretends I don't exist. I'm back, speaking to only Kevin with a casual brother. I end up feeding Jane supper, even though I didn't prepare for another visitor. Rather of showing empathy, Kevin publicly accuses me, claiming that I ought to have shown more consideration. Even though Jane apologizes verbally, it's clear that she enjoys Kevin's special attention. The dining table is a mess as Kevin and Jane continue to talk on the sofa while I make my own lunch with the leftovers. Martin and I are never acknowledged, treating us more like family and hired healthcare. One night, just before Martin and I are about to take a bath, Kevin loudly interrupts and tells me to get Jane a cake. Jane demands it right away, even if it's late. Kevin accuses me of feeling pressured and putting things off. Martin and I unwillingly make our way to the cake store, but I overhear their chat. I found out that they are doubting the choice to marry me and berating me for being careless. Martin, meantime, perceive strain in our connection, even if he cannot understand the words. Keeping my feelings in check, I ask him what kind of cake he likes, and he happily says a fruit-filled one. We spoke a lot about cakes during our visit to the cake store. Martin and I arrived just before closing time, temporarily ignoring what Kevin had said earlier. We bought 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Martin requested, after luckily discovering the cake Jane wanted. When I got home, I made Martin's cake and went to the dining room after serving Jane and Kevin their cakes. Jane pointed and said she wanted that cake as soon as I put it in front of Martin. Kevin moved Martin's selected cake in front of Jane before I could respond. Despite Martin's objections, Kevin defended his decision by saying he had the right to pick Martin and had used his earnings to purchase the cake. I expressed my displeasure because I could no longer keep my feelings to myself. Kevin responded by threatening to file for divorce. After holding my hand nervously after he had stopped crying, Martin said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it," after giving it some thought. It is indeed very tasty. Feeling that Martin was going through too much, he said this while enjoying a cake that Jane had originally requested. Jane was reaching for his cake plate, so I picked it up. Martin could eat his cake in peace, so I led him to the adjacent room. Kevin wanted to respond, but instead he apologized to Jane for being stingy. For Martin's sake, I remained silent. It warmed my heart to see Martin eat his cake so naively. We decided to take a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed after we finished the cake. I found out that Jane had already gone the next morning. I heard Martin sobbing as I was making breakfast. His piggy bank, which my father had given him, was shockingly smashed, and the money he had saved was gone. When I asked Kevin about it, Martin, who usually bid the piggy bank goodnight, was devastated. Jane stole money from the piggy bank while holding a sobbing and trembling Martin after he casually suggested that she needed some cash. I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Kevin prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Kevin, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Martin. Kevin, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand. Divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Kevin had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Kevin and Jane, seemed to have reached his limit crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Martin so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud yes, showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding with Martin, bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off in the morning. We visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we went home after lunch, Martin seemed exhausted, generally napping by himself. But tonight he fell asleep on my lap like when he was a newborn. Though I first thought about performing home duties during his nap, I decided that today was unique. Instead, I allowed myself to be healed by his calm, sleeping face and soft breathing. However, my tranquil moment was quickly disrupted by a noise from the entry, signaling the front door had opened. As it wasn't Kevin's typical time to arrive home, I felt suspicious and hastily hid in the bedroom closet, hugging Martin. A voice resonated through the house, and to my amazement, it was Jane. Trembling with terror, I listened as she sought for something, expressing displeasure over not finding it. After that, Jane called Kevin and talked about their fruitless quest. I heard her lock the front door and go out, so I put Martin to bed and thought about what had happened. I couldn't understand what they were searching for or why Jane had gone inside the home. All of a sudden, Kevin appeared unfamiliar to me, and I was both afraid and disgusted by him. Martin and I quickly packed our belongings, went to the station, and boarded a train to my parents' place. Luckily, their house was just 2 stops away. Despite the fact that I hadn't called them in advance, my parents read my face and greeted us without a question. I told them about the whole situation, including how Kevin and Jane's behavior made me afraid to stay at our house. When my mother suggested that Jane could have been searching for my possessions, including cash cards, I thought back to my previous role as a prosperous CEO in the handcrafted product sector. After getting married, I made the decision to put my child's upbringing first. Therefore, I handed the business to friends. Even so, I continued to work part-time and corresponded with the business from home. I was still the CEO, but Kevin didn't know that. Kevin had tucked away the divorce papers, which I found. I had a suspicion that he believed I had a respectable amount of money saved. I have, however, informed him that I continued to get some support from the organization. I have purposefully kept my money and my role as CEO a secret. The reason for this concealment is that we discovered early on in our marriage that Kevin has trouble handling money and frequently spends it all. At first, Kevin only sent $200 a month to cover food expenditures, and he even advised me to leave my work and focus entirely on being a housewife. But I never consented to be a full-time housewife because of the financial burden of raising Martin and only having $200 for groceries. In the end, he grudgingly gave me permission to work part-time in order to make sure I wouldn't think about getting a divorce. Through a lawyer, he forced me to sign a post-marriage property waiver. I have been using my funds for Martin's clothing and nursery expenses since his birth. I've only ever asked Kevin for $200 for food. Therefore, he assumes I have savings because I've never asked him for more money than the food budget. They may be looking for my cash cards given Jane's seeming need for money and Kevin's assessment of my financial status. A portion of my monthly paycheck is directly placed into a separate savings account that I have set aside just for Martin. Since I usually keep my valuables with me, they will not be able to locate the cash cards. But there's still a disturbing problem. Even when we're not home, Jane may be coming in, and Kevin might not be by himself yet. I chose to keep my belongings, including the cash cards, in my parents' safe as advised by my father, as I considered their financial necessity. Infuriated by Martin's account, my father pledged to contact Kevin after Martin approached him, sobbing over his destroyed piggy bank and the broken promise of helping him. My mother advised determining their goal in a composed manner. I chose to videotape their talk, since Kevin's reference to a divorce may transfer the burden to us, making it easier for him to determine their motivation. Speaking with my father's acquaintance, a lawyer, I went back home and started preparing supper while surreptitiously recording on my phone. To my surprise, Kevin asked about my cash cards as soon as he got home. He tried to mislead me by giving me evasive replies when I asked him questions. Kevin became furious and wanted all of my part-time money for his sister when I didn't say anything. I clarified that Martin's funds were the source. He was furious and hurled the divorce papers at me, saying I didn't need to save for Martin because I was living on his money. He even said things that suggested he valued Jane more than our kid. When I heard this, I placed the divorce papers in my bag, stopped cooking, took Martin's hand, and left. Kevin loudly stated that he was serious about getting a divorce and told me not to return. In response, I said I wouldn't go back to a home where a stranger was free to enter and exit. Kevin called and left me a lot of messages after I left, but I ignored them. I went to my folks' place and turned off my phone, giving them the divorce papers and the recording. I said that I didn't love or care about Kevin, but I did care for Martin. Given the possible emotional impact on Martin, my parents encouraged me to follow my own wishes. Kevin Martin said he would be hungry if a divorce happened while he was considering the divorce. When she saw how upset I was, my mother graciously prepared his favorite meal, hamburgers, overwhelmed with feelings. As my mother smiled warmly and informed Martin that she had made the hamburgers so that he and I could come over whenever we wanted, I started crying. Martin took a taste and cried out in delight. Grande praised hamburgers and said he wanted to eat them every day. I said, "It's because the hamburger contains the love I have for him," and he presented it to me after taking a large chunk in a heartfelt gesture. Martin's generosity moved me so much that I was unable to control my emotions, despite my best efforts to suppress them. Seeing Martin's anxiety, my father comforted him by telling him that my tears were not tears of sorrow but of joy. When he heard this, Martin suddenly understood and gave me a hug, and my father's eyes glowed crimson. "Family is precious," I said, Martin, acknowledging the joy of being among family. He asked, surprised, if his father had said that only Jane was family. My father asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as family after tactfully confirming it. Martin cheerfully agreed, causing everyone to grin even though they were thinking about getting a divorce. I eventually made the decision to say goodbye to Kevin since the dinner made me feel so pleased. I was going to tell Martin about it, and although talking about it was really painful for me, Martin seemed to understand. With joy, he embraced the beloved dog and referred to him as his younger brother, expressing the wish to live as a family. Even though the dog was older, the divorce process started with calling a lawyer who was my father's buddy. We signed the contract the next day, and as I lay in bed thinking back on my early years, my father and Martin laughed reassuringly. When I checked my phone the next day, I discovered more than 200 texts and calls from Kevin, demonstrating his emotional instability. Tired, I switched off my phone, and, with the lawyer's help, we told my parents what had happened. Due to her gambling and shopping addictions, Jane had accrued substantial debt, and Kevin served as her guarantor. "Are you going to spend my savings?" Kevin cried when he realized the divorce was finalized when the lawyer verified that the divorce papers had already been filed. He promised to provide Martin $340 a month, even though he anticipated arguments over child support. When Kevin called back later, his tone was non-aggressive, and he articulated his nuanced sentiments for Jane while coolly confessing to financial trickery. I heard him sob a little before he wished me luck and disconnected up after I adamantly stated that I would not be changing my mind. I talked to my parents about my future intentions and made the decision to stay with them till Martin grew up, staying strong until the very end. After I was appointed president of the firm, I was disappointed to find that Kevin and Jane had told their parents about the debt and divorce. Being with my family makes me happy today.